Greetings, Culturians, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to talk a little bit more about Superman and its underperformance. You see, there needs to be something significant that keeps the new DC alive. Zack Snyder had something there. Fans appreciated the gritty take on the superheroes of the time, and they liked a darker and more brooding Superman. But what's to like about James Gunn's version? And I just don't see it. I don't think the audience sees it. And that proves that for many reasons, it has no staying power, which is what we're here to talk about. So here we go. Now, before we get started, just a real quick reminder, I'm here to try to get to 50K, so do me the small favor of double checking you're still subscribed to the channel, and if that button is red, turn it to gray, and make sure you're subscribed. Then click the little silver bell icon and turn on all those notifications so you don't miss anything. I do dozens of pieces of content each and every week just for you. And if you've been here for the first time or the 5,000th time, I would really appreciate your support. So take the time and subscribe because it's free, and hit the like button before we move on. Speaking of moving on, here's the story. James Gunn's Superman proves it has no staying power across the world, and it truly doesn't. It's not really sought after, and there's a lot of reasons why. Again, Matt McGloin writes this article over there at Cosmic Book News and says James Gunn's Superman didn't collapse automatically, but the internationally small box office tells a different story. And now Sony boss Tom Rothman is directly highlighting exactly why that matters. While Rothman never mentions Gunn, Superman, or the DCU by name, he comments about the importance of global performance draw a sharp contrast with how Superman performed overseas, just as many of the insiders have been pointing out for months. Now, let me address this myself. This has been an ongoing problem, not just for DC, but for many franchises, including Avatar. Avatar's, Ash and Fire, whatever it is that was created most recently, didn't do all that well, didn't have a lot of staying power, and it continues to remind me the cultural zeitgeist infiltration for that particular franchise has been minimal at best. While people do look forward to looking at the pretty blue things, that's it. They don't have a lot of connection with the characters, and most people can't name more than 3. And a lot of people don't even understand why we're getting repeats of the same story over and over and over again. It's like Fern Gully on repeat, and a less, well done one. And look, James Cameron has done plenty of great films. It's just the Avatar franchises that you're not really good with sequels. And one of the reasons I think that it's important to pay attention to what Rothman is saying, Tom Rothman's been an outspoken studio head for a long period of time. He's always kind of spot on. He always kind of points out where the market is. He also kind of is one of the early people to say we don't need a streaming platform, and recognizing that a good secondary market would be to go to to have Sony go to Netflix, and that can't be argued. Regardless, you don't have to mention what's not working to understand what is. And I think that Rothman understands that, not taking criticism directly to the studio, which again, Warner Brothers seems to misrun just about everything these days. Although I would say that both Pam and Michael are doing a good job for the brand as a whole. The international box office is everything. Appearing on the Town podcast with Matt Bellany, Sony Pictures CEO Tom Rothman discussed whether movie stars still matter. His answer, yeah, but only in the right material. That's another big place where we can agree, saying that Sydney Sweeney and The Housemaid was proof. That works. You put somebody who's popular and attractive in a role like that, and you've got a winner. He said Housemaid was a terrific hit. That's a big hit movie. Then he emphasized what really matters. And here's the significant thing about Housemaid that made people probably pay as much attention to it. The same with Anyone But You. It's a global hit. The movie's huge internationally, which means it's playing to the widest possible audience, which Hollywood hasn't done for a very long time. In fact, with its mostly negative political takes, and specifically aiming those at the United States and leaning into some very divisive politics, Hollywood as a whole has been well, limiting their appeal. You need the domestic box office because those are the folks at home that guarantee you 50% of the box office take, or right in there. And when you get to the international audience, as long as you don't count China, you might pull in another 50% or so as well. Those are good if you can get them. Sometimes you can't. It depends on the film's distribution in the first place. But the last part of the equation, as Matt points out here, is key. The Housemaid earned 65.8% of its box office from the international markets, getting back to what the norm was. If you remember back to when films were performing in the billions, most of the audience, 2/3 of it, in fact, were playing internationally. The other third was here domestically. And right now, the appeal and the broad appeal isn't happening the way that it should be. If your earnings end up being too one-sided, more domestic than international, you've got a real problem and the film will underperform. Rothman reveals that's what studios want, a global appeal, overseas strength, long legs, and as many markets as they can capture. He doesn't say that, but I add it. So Superman fell short overseas by not just a little, by a lot. And by comparison, James Gunn's Superman generated only 42.7% of its total box office from international markets. It needs that split because the U.S. is a given fit population that you can kind of calculate what the earnings will be from. If you don't get that 2/3 buy-in internationally, it hurts. And that's not just lower, it's drastically lower. As insiders said, the foreign audience completely rejected James Gunn's Superman, especially the Asian audience. Who does the foreign DC audience favor? The Snyderverse, something a little more gritty and familiar, something that has a broader appeal. And for a lot of different reasons, Gunn doesn't have that. And that's a real problem. And the Snyderverse connected with DC fans. For context, Zack Snyder's DCEU films performed significantly stronger overseas, in addition to the domestic and worldwide box offices. Man of Steel, for example, 56.6% international. Batman v Superman, 62.2% international. And Justice League, theatrical version, at 65.4% international. Those are significant numbers, and they make a significant difference. I don't think it can be argued. The numbers don't lie, according to Matt. The global audience showed up for the Snyderverse, and I don't think it can be argued. Gunn's Superman didn't generate anywhere near that same level of international interest, and perhaps it was the poor marketing campaigns, the choice of settings, and maybe even the choice of colors. But maybe it just didn't connect with the audiences because it was written around a political mindset that wasn't appealing globally. And per Rothman's comments, that matters more than ever in today's theatrical landscape, and I could not agree more. The shortened Superman theatrical window speaks volumes. It does. It tells the tale of the tape, which is something we focus on here on the channel. And don't forget that Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos recently testified before Congress under oath that underperforming achieve and receive shorter theatrical windows. Superman hit VOD after just 35 days. The industry norm remains around 45 days. And it's very telling, again, by all measurements, that when you don't appeal to the broadest audience and when you're quote-unquote played out in the U.S. market, normally you still have legs internationally. That's not how Superman worked out. And a lot of other failed movie properties, if you just go back in time and look at them. Snow White didn't have the same appeal as the original for 1,000 different reasons, but mostly because of the staggering changes made to a family-friendly and very popular IP. Significantly rocking the story and making it more political was something that significantly destroyed its earnings because people who live in oppression don't want a movie about, more oppression. They want something that's akin to, well, the original tale told by Walt Disney that was an even positive take on what the original fairy tale was. Regardless, it doesn't seem to matter. The international reception is always going to be something to look at going forward, which is why some of the horror movies that do very well and are profitable here in the U.S. just aren't in other markets. They earn the majority of their revenue in the U.S., and that's to be expected. But what's also to be expected is the fact that the budgets are very low for those films, and they only have to perform well in the United States. Can you think of any other film category that does that? If so, let me know in the comments section below. And with that, I have just a few questions for you because your opinions are as good, if not better, than mine. Oftentimes our conversations lead me to make new videos about different subjects or even the same subject multiple times. So I'll ask you, do you think that Hollywood should be more focused on the broadest possible appeal, or should they niche their audiences like they've been doing? Should something like Superman find a way to be more broadly appealing than, let's say, 28 years later, Bone Temple? Of course, there's a huge difference there. They're not comparables. They're not apples to apples. But let's talk about the fact that 28 years later was a film that did much better than the following film with Nia DaCosta directing of Bone Temple. When you compare apples to apples like that, it starts to make sense. 28 years later has broad appeal, but the second movie, because of the first movie, didn't turn the audience on, nor were they going to return to something they already saw headed down the wrong direction. Same thing's true with Superman and what I expect will be a very disappointing, underperforming Drunk Supergirl. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Again, let me know in the comments section below if I missed anything, or if I'm misunderstanding these numbers, which I don't think I am, or if you have a different spin on why Superman wasn't successful than even Tom Rothman did. On that note, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya. For real. Just not watching a lot of gun movies anymore. When injustice strikes, I strike back.